The Silent Guardian, a story of digital warfare. The cyber attack on Riverside Nuclear Facility had been running for 6 hours. Every firewall was down, every security protocol compromised. That's when FBI agent Morrison pulled up an old classified file and found one name: Emma Walsh, former NSA cyber operations specialist, current public librarian. "We need the ghost," he said. "Find her, now." Welcome to Hidden Valor. Before we dive into this high-stakes story of digital warfare and hidden expertise, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. Every Guardian story matters. The Riverside Public Library occupied a stately brick building on Main Street, its tall windows letting in afternoon sunlight that illuminated dust motes dancing above rows of carefully organized books. At 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday in September, the main floor hummed with the gentle activity of a community library. Elderly patrons reading newspapers, students working on homework, mothers reading to toddlers in the children's section. Emma Walsh sat behind the circulation desk, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose as she processed returned books with methodical efficiency. At 38, she had the quiet demeanor of someone who genuinely loved books and the people who read them. She wore a simple cardigan over a floral blouse, sensible shoes, and carried herself with the unassuming presence of someone who preferred to remain unnoticed. "Mrs. Walsh," called Tommy Chen, a 10-year-old regular who visited the library every day after school. "Do you have any new books about space?" Emma smiled, the genuine warmth that had made her beloved by the library's patrons lighting up her face. "I just got in a wonderful book about black holes, Tommy. Let me show you." She led him to the science section, navigating the familiar aisles with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly where every book belonged. For 12 years, this had been her world, helping patrons find information, organizing literacy programs, and maintaining the peaceful sanctuary that public libraries represented in an increasingly chaotic world. What her patrons didn't know was that before she'd become the quiet librarian who helped them find cookbooks and romance novels, Emma Walsh had been someone entirely different. Before she'd chosen the peaceful world of books and reading programs, she'd been one of the most feared cyber warriors in the intelligence community, someone whose online handle, The Ghost, had become legendary among both allies and enemies. What they didn't know was that the woman who patiently taught elderly patrons how to use email had once penetrated the most secure computer networks in the world, that her gentle fingers had once typed code that could cripple entire digital infrastructures, that her quiet voice had once briefed generals and cabinet secretaries on threats they couldn't see coming. Emma had walked away from that life after a mission in Eastern Europe had gone wrong, after she'd discovered that the intelligence she'd gathered had been used in ways that violated everything she believed about protecting innocent people. She'd resigned from the NSA, moved to a small town where nobody asked questions about her past, and built a new identity around the simple pleasure of connecting people with information that enriched their lives rather than destroyed them. For 12 years, it had worked perfectly. At 3:15 p.m., as Emma finished helping Tommy find his spacebook, her peaceful world began to unravel. The first sign was subtle, a barely perceptible change in the hum of the library's computer system. Emma's trained ear caught the variation in the hard drive activity, the slight delay in the network response that most people would never notice. She paused at the circulation desk, listening to sounds that others couldn't distinguish from normal computer operation. Something was wrong. Emma moved to her workstation and began running diagnostic checks with the casual efficiency of someone performing routine maintenance. To anyone watching, she was simply doing normal computer work. In reality, she was conducting a preliminary cybersecurity assessment using skills she hadn't needed in over a decade. What she found made her blood run cold. The library's network was being used as a relay point for a sophisticated cyber attack. Someone was routing malicious traffic through that system, using the library's innocent public internet access to mask an assault on a target Emma couldn't immediately identify. But the attack signature was familiar. Too familiar. Emma's fingers flew across the keyboard with suddenly urgent purpose, tracing the attack vectors, analyzing the code structure, identifying the methodologies being employed. Every piece of evidence pointed to something she'd hoped never to encounter again, a state-sponsored cyber warfare operation. And the target, when she finally identified it, made her heart stop. Riverside Nuclear Facility, 12 miles outside town. The power plant that provided electricity to half the region and employed 300 people, including the fathers and mothers of children who came to her library every day. Someone was trying to hack into a nuclear facility, and they were using her library to do it. At 3:47 p.m., Emma Walsh made a decision that would end her quiet life forever. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized but hoped never to use. "This is Emma Walsh," she said when the call connected. "I need to speak to someone in cyber threat assessment. It's urgent." FBI Cyber Division headquarters in Washington, D.C. operated 24 hours a day, monitoring digital threats to national security from a high-tech command center that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Agent David Morrison had been running the late afternoon shift for 6 years, overseeing a team of cyber analysts who tracked everything from bank fraud to international espionage. At 4:23 p.m., his secure phone rang with the kind of call that changed everything. "Morrison here." "Agent Morrison, this is Emma Walsh. I'm calling about an active cyber attack on Riverside Nuclear Facility. The assault is being routed through the public library network, and I have reason to believe this is a sophisticated state-sponsored operation." Morrison paused, his attention sharpening. Calls about nuclear facility threats went directly to the top of every priority list. "Ma'am, what's your connection to this situation? Are you reporting suspicious activity or—" "I'm reporting an active cyber warfare operation that I've been monitoring for the past 37 minutes. The attackers have compromised the facility's perimeter firewalls and are currently attempting to penetrate the control systems." Something in the woman's voice, the precision of her language, the confident assessment of technical details, made Morrison sit up straighter. "Ma'am, can you hold, please?" Morrison muted the call and turned to his lead analyst. "Run a trace on this call and check our threat board for any alerts about Riverside Nuclear." 30 seconds later, his analyst looked up with an expression of alarm. "Sir, we've got automated alerts coming in from Riverside. Their security contractor reported unusual network activity starting about 40 minutes ago, but they classified it as a potential false alarm." Morrison unmuted the call. "Ms. Walsh, I need you to tell me exactly how you know about this attack." "Because I'm watching it happen in real time, and I recognize the attack signature." "Agent Morrison, you have maybe 2 hours before they penetrate the core control systems. After that, they can cause anything from a controlled shutdown to a catastrophic failure." "Ma'am, I need to ask about your background. How are you able to monitor and analyze a cyber attack of this sophistication?" Emma was quiet for a moment, and Morrison could hear the sound of rapid typing in the background. "My name is Emma Walsh. I'm currently the head librarian at Riverside Public Library. From 1998 to 2011, I was a senior cyber operations specialist with the National Security Agency." Morrison's fingers flew across his keyboard, pulling up classified personnel databases. When Emma Walsh's file appeared on his screen, he felt his breath catch. "You're the ghost," he said quietly. "I was the ghost. Now I'm a librarian. But Agent Morrison, that distinction isn't going to matter if we don't stop this attack in the next 90 minutes. Morrison stared at the file on his screen. Emma Walsh, codename Ghost, had been one of the NSA's most effective cyber warriors. Her classified operations included penetrating foreign government networks, disrupting terrorist communications, and developing defensive protocols that were still classified above his clearance level. According to her file, she'd resigned abruptly in 2011 and disappeared from the intelligence community entirely. "Ms. Walsh, I need you to stay on the line. I'm mobilizing a response team, but we need your assessment of the current threat level." "The current threat level is critical," Emma said, her voice calm but urgent. "They're using a modified version of Stuxnet. You remember Stuxnet?" Morrison remembered. Stuxnet had been the most sophisticated cyber weapon ever deployed, designed specifically to attack industrial control systems. It had been used to damage Iran's nuclear program and had demonstrated that cyber attacks could cause physical destruction in the real world. "This variant is more advanced," Emma continued. "It's designed specifically for this facility's systems. This isn't a random attack, Agent Morrison. Someone has been planning this for months, maybe years." What do you need from us? I need a secure connection to your cyber command center, and I need you to get me access to the facility's network architecture. I can stop this, but I need to work from inside their systems. Morrison made a decision that went against every protocol he'd been trained to follow. Ms. Walsh, there's a helicopter landing at the Riverside Community College athletic field in 22 minutes. Can you be there? I'll be there. And Ms. Walsh, welcome back to the war. The helicopter ride to FBI headquarters took 47 minutes, during which Emma stared out the window at the landscape rushing past below and tried to process how quickly her carefully constructed new life had evaporated. 12 years. 12 years of quiet mornings, organizing books, peaceful afternoons helping patrons, simple evenings in her cottage with her cat and her garden. 12 years of believing she'd left the world of digital warfare behind forever. But as the helicopter approached the landing pad at the Federal Building, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in over a decade, the sharp, focused clarity that came with facing a threat that only she was equipped to handle. Agent Morrison met her at the landing pad, extending his hand as she stepped out of the aircraft. Ms. Walsh, thank you for coming. I have to tell you, your file makes for interesting reading. Emma shook his hand, noting the calluses that suggested regular firearms training and the alert posture that marked him as someone who took threats seriously. Agent Morrison, how long do we have? Our estimates suggest 93 minutes before they achieve full system penetration, maybe less. Then we need to move fast. Morrison led her through security checkpoints and into an elevator that required both a key card and a numerical code. As they descended to the Cyber Command Center, he briefed her on what they knew. The attack started approximately 6 hours ago with probing actions against the facility's perimeter defenses. For the first 4 hours, it looked like routine scanning, the kind of low-level testing that most secure facilities see on a daily basis. But then it escalated, Emma said, dramatically. At 2:30 p.m., they began deploying sophisticated penetration tools. By 3:00 p.m., they'd compromised the first layer of security. That's when our automated monitoring system started generating alerts. The elevator doors opened onto a room that took Emma's breath away. The FBI's Cyber Command Center was a cathedral of digital warfare, dozens of workstations arranged in concentric circles, multiple large screens displaying network traffic and threat assessments from around the world, analysts working with the focused intensity that came with defending the nation's digital infrastructure. Impressive, Emma said. Ms. Walsh, Morrison said, I need to ask you something directly. You disappeared from the intelligence community in 2011. For 12 years, you've been completely off the grid. Why? Emma paused at the entrance to the command center, watching analysts track threats she recognized from her former life. Because I discovered that the intelligence I gathered was being used to target civilian infrastructure in ways that violated international law. I resigned rather than continue participating in operations that could harm innocent people. Morrison nodded. And now? Now someone is trying to cause a nuclear accident 12 miles from my library. This isn't about geopolitical strategy or military advantage. This is about preventing a catastrophe that would kill thousands of people, including children who check out picture books from me every afternoon. Morrison led her to a workstation equipped with multiple monitors and security access that Emma recognized as top-tier cyber warfare equipment. Ms. Walsh, this is your station. You have full access to our monitoring systems and a direct connection to the nuclear facility's networks. Emma sat down and began typing, her fingers moving across the keyboard with the muscle memory of someone who'd spent years conducting digital operations. The screens came alive with data streams, network diagrams, and attack vectors that painted a picture of the most sophisticated cyber attack she'd ever encountered. This is beautiful work, she said, her voice carrying professional admiration despite the circumstances. Whoever's doing this is extremely talented. Can you stop them? Emma studied the attack patterns, analyzing the code structure and identifying the methodologies being employed. After 12 years away from this world, she was amazed at how quickly her skills returned, how naturally she fell back into the mindset of cyber warfare. I can stop them, she said finally, but I need to warn you, to do this effectively, I'm going to have to become someone I haven't been in 12 years. The ghost. The ghost. Emma turned to face Morrison directly. Agent Morrison, when I walk into that network, I'm not going to be the librarian who helps children find books about space. I'm going to be someone whose job was to fight and win digital wars. Are you prepared for that? Morrison met her gaze steadily. Ma'am, if you can save that nuclear facility and protect those people, you can be anyone you need to be. Emma nodded and turned back to her workstation. For the first time in 12 years, the ghost went to war. Emma's fingers flew across the keyboard with lethal precision as she penetrated the nuclear facility's network infrastructure. To the analysts watching her work, it looked like organized chaos. Multiple windows opening and closing, code scrolling at incomprehensible speeds, network diagrams shifting and morphing as she mapped the digital battlefield. But Emma wasn't just monitoring the attack. She was hunting. Talk me through what you're seeing, Morrison said, standing behind her workstation with a team of cyber analysts who were trying to follow her methodology. The attackers have established multiple entry points, Emma said, without taking her eyes off the screens. They're using a technique called distributed infiltration, hitting the system from dozens of different angles simultaneously to overwhelm the security protocols. Her fingers never stopped moving as she spoke, launching countermeasures and tracing attack vectors with the fluid efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times. The primary assault is focused on the control systems that manage the reactor's cooling mechanisms. If they can manipulate those systems, they can cause anything from a controlled shutdown to a core meltdown. Can they actually cause a meltdown? Asked Sarah Chen, the lead cyber analyst. Modern nuclear facilities have multiple fail-safes, Emma replied, but those fail-safes are computer-controlled. If you can compromise the computers, you can override the safety systems. A new alarm began blaring from the monitoring systems. Emma's expression darkened as she analyzed the incoming data. They just achieved second-tier penetration, she announced. They're now inside the facility's control network. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. How much time do we have? 26 minutes until they can begin manipulating core systems. Emma opened a new window and began typing code at a speed that seemed almost inhuman. Lines of text appeared and disappeared faster than the analysts could read them. What are you doing? Chen asked. I'm going ghost, Emma said simply. For the next 18 minutes, Emma Walsh disappeared into the digital realm that had once been her natural habitat. She moved through the nuclear facility's network like a wraith, invisible to the attackers but constantly present, analyzing their techniques and preparing countermeasures. The attackers were good, better than anyone she'd faced during her NSA years. They used sophisticated encryption, advanced obfuscation techniques, and attack vectors that demonstrated intimate knowledge of industrial control systems. But Emma had advantages they couldn't anticipate. I know who this is, she said suddenly, her voice carrying a mixture of recognition and concern. Who? Emma pulled up a series of code samples and network signatures. Viktor Petrov, Russian cyber warfare specialist. I've been tracking his techniques for 15 years. Morrison leaned closer. You know this guy? I've never met him in person, but I've been fighting him in cyberspace since 2003. He's one of the most sophisticated attackers in the world, and he has a particular expertise in critical infrastructure. Why would he target our nuclear facility? Emma was quiet for a moment, analyzing attack patterns and trying to understand the strategic objective. This isn't about the nuclear facility, she said finally. This is about me. What do you mean? Emma pulled up another window showing the attack's routing pattern. Look at this. The attack is being routed through 7 different countries, but one of the relay points is the public library where I work. Victor knows I'm there. He's using the nuclear facility as bait to draw me out. Morrison stared at the network diagram. He's trying to force you back into the game. More than that, he's trying to prove that no one can really leave this world behind, that once you're a cyber warrior, you're always a cyber warrior. A new alarm sounded, more urgent than the previous ones. What now? Morrison asked. Emma's expression was grim. He just penetrated the reactor's cooling control systems. We have 8 minutes before he can begin overriding safety protocols. Can you stop him? Emma looked at Morrison with eyes that held the weight of decisions she'd hoped never to make again. I can stop him, but to do it effectively, I'm going to have to deploy techniques that are aggressive. The kind of cyber weapons that can cause collateral damage. What kind of collateral damage? Power grids, communication networks, banking systems. Victor is operating from multiple locations across 3 countries. To stop this attack, I might have to take down significant portions of their digital infrastructure. Morrison understood the implications immediately. The kind of cyber warfare Emma was describing could affect millions of people, could cause economic damage that would take years to repair. Agent Morrison, Emma said quietly, I need authorization to deploy weapons-grade cyber warfare techniques. Morrison looked around the command center at analysts who were watching a digital battle that would determine whether thousands of people lived or died. Authorization granted, he said. Do whatever you have to do. Emma nodded and turned back to her workstation. Victor, she whispered as her fingers found the keyboard. Let's finish this. What happened next would be studied in cyber warfare classrooms for decades. Emma Walsh, operating under her old codename Ghost, launched a digital assault that redefined the boundaries of what was possible in cyberspace. She began by deploying a technique she'd developed during her NSA years called cascade infiltration, a method of penetrating multiple networks simultaneously by exploiting the interconnected nature of modern digital infrastructure. Within 3 minutes, she'd gained access to systems in Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran. Jesus Christ, whispered Chen, watching Emma's attack unfold across multiple screens. She just penetrated the Russian Ministry of Defense. Emma's assault was surgical in its precision and devastating in its scope. She didn't attack randomly or cause unnecessary damage. Instead, she traced Victor's network connections like a bloodhound, following digital breadcrumbs across continents and through the most secure systems in the world. Found him, Emma announced at 5:47 p.m. Victor is operating from a facility in St. Petersburg. He's using government resources, which means this is a state-sponsored operation. Morrison felt the implications hit him like a physical blow. This is an act of war. It's an act of war that we're going to win, Emma said grimly. She opened a new program that Morrison didn't recognize, lines of code that seemed to move with organic fluidity across her screen. What is that? He asked. Something I developed in 2009 but never deployed. I call it Digital Medusa. It's designed to turn an attacker's own weapons against them. Emma's fingers moved across the keyboard with hypnotic rhythm as she deployed her countermeasure. On the main monitoring screen, the analysts could see the attack on the nuclear facility suddenly stalling, the malicious code grinding to a halt as Emma's program took effect. It's working, Chen announced. The attack vectors are being neutralized. But Emma wasn't finished. Victor used my library as a relay point, she said, her voice carrying cold determination. He threatened my town, my patrons, children who trust me to keep them safe. That was a mistake. She launched a second program, this one even more sophisticated than the first. Morrison watched in fascination and growing alarm as Emma's code began propagating through Victor's network, dismantling his operation piece by piece. Emma, Morrison said carefully, what exactly are you doing to his systems? I'm making sure he can never threaten a nuclear facility again, Emma replied without looking away from her screens. I'm also making sure that every intelligence agency in the world knows exactly who he is, where he operates, and what he's been doing for the past 5 years. On the monitoring screen, they could see Victor's attack crumbling in real time. His sophisticated infiltration tools were being turned against him. His secure communications were being decrypted and broadcast, and his entire digital identity was being systematically exposed. At 6:02 p.m., the attack on Riverside Nuclear Facility ended completely. At 6:03 p.m., Viktor Petrov's career as a cyber warrior ended as well. It's over, Emma announced, finally leaning back in her chair. The facility is secure. All malicious code has been purged, and Victor's operation has been completely dismantled. The command center erupted in applause, but Emma didn't seem to hear it. She was staring at her screens with an expression that Morrison couldn't quite read. Emma, he said quietly, are you okay? She turned to look at him, and Morrison saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there 2 hours earlier. The weight of choices made in the digital shadows, the burden of wielding power that few people could understand. I did what needed to be done, she said simply. But Agent Morrison, I need to ask you for something. Anything. I need this to be the last time. I came back to save the nuclear facility, to protect my community, but I can't do this again. The person I had to become today, she's not someone I want to be. Morrison nodded slowly. The ghost is retired again? The ghost was never supposed to exist in the first place. She was just something I became when there was no other choice. Emma stood up and removed the access badges Morrison had given her. I'm going home now. Back to my library, back to helping children find books about space, back to a world where the most dangerous thing I deal with is overdue fines. Emma, Morrison said as she prepared to leave, what you did today saved thousands of lives. You know that, right? Emma paused at the entrance to the command center, looking back at the screens where analysts were still processing the aftermath of her digital warfare. I know, she said quietly, but I also know that the power to save lives and the power to destroy them come from the same place. I've spent 12 years learning how to live without that power. I'd like to keep it that way. And with that, the ghost disappeared once again, leaving behind only the memory of what happened when a quiet librarian remembered who she used to be. 3 hours later, Emma Walsh pushed open the front door of the Riverside Public Library. The evening shift had left the building secure and peaceful, the way libraries were meant to be when the day's activities wound down and the books settled into their familiar silence. Emma moved through the darkened stacks, her footsteps echoing softly on the polished floors as she made her way to her office. Everything was exactly as she'd left it: lesson plans for the children's reading program, requests for new book acquisitions, thank you cards from patrons she'd helped find information for research projects. The ordinary, peaceful world she'd built over 12 years. But as Emma sat at her desk, she could still feel the adrenaline from the afternoon's cyber warfare coursing through her system. Her fingers remembered the keyboard commands that could penetrate any security system. Her mind still held the network maps of critical infrastructure across 3 continents. The ghost wasn't as gone as she'd hoped. Her personal phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Morrison. Nuclear facility reports all systems normal, no residual threats detected. Thank you for everything. Emma typed back, just doing my job. Morrison's response came immediately. Which job, librarian or cyber warrior? Emma stared at the question for a long time before typing, both. They're more connected than I thought. The next morning, Emma arrived at the library at her usual time and began her usual routine. Books to be shelved, programs to be organized, patrons to be helped. At 9:15 a.m., Tommy Chen bounded through the front door, his backpack bouncing as he ran to the circulation desk. Mrs. Walsh, did you hear about what happened at the nuclear plant yesterday? My dad said there was some kind of computer attack, but the FBI stopped it. Emma smiled, the same warm expression she'd always given her favorite young patron. I heard something about that, Tommy. Pretty exciting stuff. Do you think the FBI has people who are really good with computers? Like super hackers who can stop the bad guys? Emma considered the question carefully. I think the FBI has people who are very dedicated to protecting others, Tommy. They probably have all kinds of skills that they use to keep people safe. That's so cool. I want to learn about computers when I get older. Maybe I could help stop bad guys too. Emma looked at Tommy's eager face and felt something shift inside her. For 12 years, she'd tried to separate her past from her present, to keep the skills she'd developed as the ghost completely distinct from her life as a librarian. But maybe that separation had been artificial. Tommy, Emma said, would you like to learn some basic computer programming? I could teach you after school. His eyes widened. Really? You know how to do programming? I know a little bit, Emma said with a smile. Maybe we could start a computer club here at the library. Teach kids about digital literacy, internet safety, that sort of thing. That would be awesome. As Tommy ran off to find his space book, Emma realized she'd made a decision without consciously thinking about it. The skills that had made her the ghost didn't have to be weapons. They could be tools for education, for protection, for building rather than destroying. Her phone buzzed with another message from Agent Morrison. Emma, I wanted you to know that Viktor Petrov was arrested this morning in St. Petersburg. The intelligence you gathered during yesterday's operation led to the exposure of a major state-sponsored cyber warfare program. You may have prevented dozens of future attacks. Emma typed back, "Glad to help. But Morrison, if something like this happens again, find someone else. The ghost is really retired this time." Morrison's response made her smile. "Understood. But Emma, the world is a safer place because people like you exist, even if you prefer to use your powers for good by helping kids find books about space." "Especially then," Emma typed back. That afternoon, Emma began planning the library's new computer literacy program. She would teach children about digital citizenship, about using technology responsibly, about protecting themselves and others in an increasingly connected world. She would use the same skills that had made her a feared cyber warrior to create the next generation of digital guardians. Some people protected the world with weapons, others protected it with knowledge. Emma Walsh had learned she could do both. 6 months later, the Riverside Public Library's computer lab buzzed with the focused energy of 20 children learning to code. Emma watched from the back of the room as 12-year-old Sarah Martinez helped 8-year-old Marcus Johnson debug his first program, while Tommy Chen excitedly explained binary code to his younger sister. "Mrs. Walsh," called Jessica Torres, raising her hand from the advanced programming section, "can you show us how to trace an IP address? I want to make sure my little brother is safe when he plays online games." Emma smiled, moving to Jessica's workstation. "That's exactly the kind of thinking that makes for good digital citizenship, Jessica. Let me show you some techniques for identifying suspicious online activity." As she guided Jessica through the basics of network analysis, Emma reflected on how naturally her two worlds had merged. The skills that had once been used for cyber warfare now served to educate and protect the next generation. The knowledge that had once been classified was now being adapted to teach children how to navigate the digital world safely. Her phone buzzed with a text from Agent Morrison, who'd become a regular correspondent. "Emma, we've got reports of a new cyber threat emerging in Southeast Asia. I don't suppose you'd be interested in consulting on defensive strategies." Emma typed back while continuing to help Jessica with her programming. "Send me the technical details. I might have some ideas for educational countermeasures." Educational countermeasures? Teaching people how to protect themselves is more effective than fighting attackers after they've already caused damage. The best defense is an informed public. Morrison's response came with a laughing emoji. "The ghost becomes a teacher. I like it." That evening, as Emma locked up the library and prepared to head home, she paused at the computer lab to look at the projects her students had been working on. Programs designed to help elderly people navigate social media safely, apps that taught younger children about password security, websites that provided resources for identifying and reporting cyberbullying. Each project represented a young person who was learning to be a digital guardian, someone who would use technology to protect and serve others rather than exploit or harm them. Tommy Chen's project caught her attention, a simple program that he'd titled Library Guardian. According to his documentation, it was designed to help librarians protect their patrons' information from bad people who try to steal it. Emma smiled, realizing that Tommy had instinctively understood something that had taken her years to learn. The most important battles weren't fought in the shadows between elite cyber warriors, but in classrooms and libraries where ordinary people learn to protect themselves and others. As she turned off the lights and headed for the door, Emma felt a deep satisfaction that was different from anything she'd experienced during her years as the ghost. Cyber warfare had given her the power to protect people from specific threats. Teaching gave her the power to help people protect themselves from threats she might never see coming. Her phone buzzed one final time, a message from Sarah Martinez. "Mrs. Walsh, I've been thinking about what I want to do when I grow up. I want to be like you. Someone who uses technology to help people and keep them safe. Can you teach me more about cybersecurity?" Emma typed back, "Sarah, I would be honored to teach you everything I know. The world needs more people who understand that technology is a tool for protecting and serving others." "Is that what you did before you became a librarian?" Emma paused, considering how to answer. "Yes," she typed finally. "But I've learned that teaching people to protect themselves is even more important than protecting them yourself." As Emma drove home through the quiet streets of Riverside, past the nuclear facility where lights twinkled peacefully in the distance, she realized that her journey had come full circle in the best possible way. The ghost had been a warrior in the digital shadows. Emma Walsh, the librarian, was building an army of educated citizens who would never need someone like the ghost to protect them. Some guardians worked alone in classified operations. Others created communities of people who could guard themselves. Emma had learned that the second approach was far more powerful than the first. The quiet librarian who'd once been the world's most feared cyber warrior had found her true calling, teaching the next generation that the greatest power came not from the ability to fight, but from the wisdom to prevent fights from ever beginning. In a world where information was power, Emma Walsh had chosen to give that power away, one student, one lesson, one library program at a time.